For Merritt,
Yes.
I feel like I'm on a game show all of a sudden. So for agencies, you guys at Teacher Retirement System have a lot of resources. You have a very mature organizational change management. I think you guys are pretty progressive in the way, like even, what do you call HR, enterprise?
Organizational excellence.
Organizational excellence. And just hearing you talk about the journey that y'all are on and the posters and the videos, you have a lot of resources available to you internally that I think some agencies don't. So if you had an agency that you were working with that did not have maybe some of those things, how do you think you might be able to go either a little more low tech or a little more guerrilla or just a little more low budget to achieve some of the same goals of getting the word out and building the buzz and the excitement?
I think it's similar. I mean, there's a need for the consistency around what you're doing. I think that's key, no matter what materials you're using to kind of get your message across. It's a matter of really being consistent with each new technology that you roll out so your audience really knows what to expect and they're going to engage accordingly. The first couple iterations that we were putting things out there, folks didn't seem as receptive to it. They didn't necessarily know what to expect, weren't looking for it. But of course, over time, people get more accustomed to a regular cadence of the way you're delivering information to them. And so I think that inherently makes them more receptive and they look for it. It's like, oh, I should be expecting a new poster on what's coming next, or, I'm going to be looking for that email because it actually has information in it that's relevant. So you don't have to have all the fancy stuff. And I think there's always a way to scale that back. Honestly, if we didn't have our OCM, which is our Organizational Change Management Department that helps us with that, we would probably do a lot of that on our own, because we came up with the concepts, a lot of it, folks outside of that. And that was our avenue for actually getting the things printed, and they would provide guidance. But so I wouldn't say get discouraged if you don't have those departments, because I think it's still totally doable. But the real relevancy there is the consistency and training people on how they're going to be receiving that information, because then instead of them getting in and ignoring it, they start to look for it. And that's where we've really seen that major shift.
Yeah, that's great. Any questions about that for an agency that, I remember we were working with Texas Parks and Wildlife on their Office 365 rollout, and we helped them, our graphic design group, actually did some posters for them. Of course, it was funny because she came up with this concept, elk, deer, I think we called it a delk, and I was like, that doesn't exist for Parks and Wildlife. You can't just put some fictitious animal on a poster. So, but posters, things in-house. Any questions about getting the word out and creating buzz?
How do you initiate that? We're a small agency and they are not so receptive to change. How do you get them to go along with the change?
So you have to be repetitive about it. They say people have to see things 3 times before they actually absorb it. And so that's one way. Another is like I mentioned with the branding, if you can get something that will help identify your initiative to where it's a recognition for them, no matter what kind of material it's on, like we did with that logo, where people know what they're relating to, that would be a big thing. When you get started, you're never going to get all the buy-in that you're looking for. It's a matter of being consistent about that and changing it and measuring, like we talked about along the way, to see what's effective and adjusting accordingly. We can use in fact, we've tried using certain materials in different areas to gauge the two against one another. So we've got, a better way to gauge what material is working versus not. And you're going to inevitably find too that certain types of materials are going to work better for some departments than they do others. But that's the key, is just go with your best instinct, measure, and then adjust accordingly. And there's never a one size fits all. And so I would recommend, no matter what avenues you use, that you have we like to call it a menu of options there. So you want to make sure that you're using different types of materials. Don't rely on just one type of messaging. And again, the champions that you find, the people that are embedded in different areas, that you can get on board, you'll find those guys. They'll bubble up to the top. They'll come to you with questions. They'll be more interested. They'll want to be engaged. Leverage those people. That's what they're there for. They can help spread the message and help sell it for you, and that doesn't cost you a dime. So.
I have one question about when you were talking about your pilots, your betas. Can you share an example of something unexpected that you learned in that process and maybe an adjustment that you found ended up benefiting you long term from that? Did you think about it?
Oh, okay, yeah. So she's asking specifically during our betas, did we learn something that was unexpected? And second part.
Maybe the adjustment that you made and how it ended up benefiting more people.
Right. Okay, and the adjustment that we made, and did it end up benefiting more people? I'm gonna have to think about that one for a second. I mean, our betas were just so much of a learning curve for all of us. There's not really, I'll speak to it, I think, more in general terms as the things that we learned inherently through the questions that were being asked. You know, we were getting functionality questions that were coming through our team's support channels that we had to go and research and then share. I think the way that we were sharing that information maybe was probably our biggest realization, because, you know, you kind of divert back to the way you've always done things and don't leverage what's right in front of you. And once we realized we need to utilize these new technologies to get the word out of the things that we were learning, that's where the value was. And so I know that's not a great example. I was trying to think of some specifics, like functionality-wise. I don't know. I think it was really a surprise for us that the first department that really latched on and embraced and learned was our HR department. I think everyone expected, because we started piloting with IT, that they would be kind of the trailblazers and the folks that would go out, and that was not the case at all. In fact, our HR department and then our investments division, they were the ones that really took the initiative, and we ended up learning from them at the end of the day. In fact, when we do our lunch and learns and when we did our kickoffs with the different groups, because we did roll the beta out in phases, we learned that some of our IT groups needed a lot more help than some of the other areas. So that was a learning experience, and I lost my train of thought on the other.
I have another thought on what you were saying that I think is interesting. If you don't mind me sharing a little TRS dirty laundry, nothing too bad.
Depends on what it is.
Yeah, I know, right? So I'll just start and you kick me if. No, so we've been working with TRS for about 3 years, and the first really big project we did was a complete redesign of their internet-facing .gov site. And what we found in that was we were working with primarily the IT group to do that. And then we had a very strong personality person from the business come in and just come through the meeting like a torpedo, because her group was not being consulted, represented, part of the decision-making process. So that was one experience. Then we did a second, and it worked out great because we were then able to get them enrolled. Actually, the person who is the sort of the torpedo, one of the other people from her group who was a little more soft around the edges, became the representative from that group to the working committee, and so it worked out really well. But the lesson there was, if you're doing an IT-led project and you don't have buy-in from some of your constituents who might be really important to the agency's mission and mandate and might feel like we should have a voice at the table, that's one way to get yourself in trouble. Get closer. The other way to get yourself in trouble is if you are working directly with the business and you're not consulting with the IT group. And so we were working with the business side, and it happened to be in this same lady's group, and we were completely aligned to her, so everything was beautiful. But then we kind of got called into the principal's office, the CIO, and he said, hey, I think it's great what you're doing. We're in full support, and we have a lot going on. So just because they want to roll something out doesn't necessarily mean we can fit it in our timeline. And so we created really a liaison relationship where Catapult really served. We're working with the business here, we're working with IT here, and members of IT and members of the business, we were all sort of getting together to make sure we were all staying friendly and all keeping each other informed and being realistic about what was possible. And so the lesson there was, you got to get the business engaged from an outcomes perspective, like you were speaking about earlier, but you also have to engage with IT because there's only so much they can do, and there could be some really good reasons that you can't turn that on yet. And the thing that we were speaking about earlier, I think you get a lot more patience from the business side if they know that there's a roadmap, they know there's a goal, and they don't feel like they're being paid lip service. But it's a delicate balance. And there can be an us and them relationship between IT and business because it's what's IT doing to us versus what is IT doing for us. So we work a lot with our IT departments to help kind of turn them into the heroes. Like, look at all this cool stuff you're going to enable the business to do. And if you present it in such a way and you get them engaged, the business side engaged, and they feel like they're part of the story, then it can go really well. Yeah. So Tale of Two Cities there.
Yeah. Well, and it was Debbie? Is it? Dahlia. Sorry, I don't have my glasses on. You were saying you have a group of employees, right, that are possibly a tad resistant to change, right? So my systems replacement experience goes back to the COBOL days when we were replacing those systems where you type. This one system had over 700 three-letter combinations that you use to accomplish things in the system. And the people that were really good at it knew every one of those by heart, and they could whip through that system faster than you can even imagine. And this was for tax collection, so pretty complex. We were replacing it with a system where you had to click buttons and use a mouse. And a lot of these people had never used a mouse before. And so but what Merritt and Michael have talked about, this idea of change champions. So I've used that over and over again with large state rollouts, right? And incorporating your most vocal opponents to change. But in order to do that, you have to do the other thing, which is balance that with a business need that they find personally problematic. And so it's working with your IT group and others in the organization to find those pain points within the systems in order to have a purpose for them to be a champion for you. And there's a lot of ways to do that, but we have over at TRS there's a great group of champions, right? And they get together and they meet, but it's getting them to invest that time is a challenge. But then also reaching out to some of the more vocal opponents and converting them, right, by showing them how the system is going to solve problems. And there's lots of tools that we have to do that. One of them we called was gaps and bridges. So we talked about things that you're doing now and where are the gaps in your process, right? Where are the gaps in our coverage and our facilitation of things that are important to you? Okay, and let's build bridges, right? Let's build systematic, so IT bridges or process bridges, right, to cross those gaps. And so we had our gaps and bridges meeting where we would actually talk about those things and figure out how we're gonna cross those gaps. And when you're doing something that is problematic to to a lot of people in your organization, that's really a great way to dig in.
One thing I just wanted to add to that in your messaging, we really stepped back and focused on the attention-grabbing things. Like, what is someone who sees this? What's going to grab their attention? What's going to make them want to know more, right? And so we really keyed on the things that were beneficial for them, like across the board. Like, I'm going to make it easier for you to work from home. People grab onto that like crazy, want to work from home more often, ? I mean, that was like some of our posters, literally. And so it's not always easy to sell change, but you've got to find, like you were saying, Tim, in the user stories or the attention-grabbing messages, something that shows that it's going to provide value for them. And with the more global things like working remotely or, hey, I want to have access to my documents offline and then, be able to sync back up and everything's grand. And with OneDrive, those are the kinds of things that are going to sell it for you.
So just kind of piling on to this, one of the things that we offer to our customers, and we did this with TRS, is we run a number of sessions that are called immersion experiences, and that's an advantage that you have with the Microsoft platform, is that we can spin up these fully functional, you can call them demonstration environments if you will, but it's the ability to be able to showcase to any number of users that you might identify that are willing to participate in a few hours of a very hands-on understanding what's possible with these new tools. Because that's oftentimes, that's the first step, is just trying to understand what's available to me, and what problems does it address and does it solve. So during these immersive experience sessions, again, it's not a demo, it's very hands-on, so they're getting the experience of it, is we walk them through trying to say, okay, for example, do you suffer from this challenge today? Or do you experience this pain in the way you share information or find content and so forth? And invariably, most people will be in the room going, yes, that's exactly what we do. And then we immediately flip over and say, okay, would it be better if you did it this way? And then we walk them through, and those are what I call the light bulb moments, right? Because people will suddenly go, wow, that's cool. I had no idea you could do it that way. And if you can give this to me, I can think of 2 to 3 different things that we do on a weekly basis that would address that problem right off the bat. So our goal typically is to the points that were made earlier around ensuring that IT is also involved in the process. Is we'll do everything we can to ensure that we're informing and educating and aligning with the IT team within your organization, within your agency, to make sure they have the understanding, the knowledge, it's part of their overall roadmap, and they're not in complete disagreement with going that approach, so that when we do engage with the business users in this immersive experience and they have those light bulb moments, and ideally maybe even some of the IT folks are in the room listening, they'll immediately turn to those folks and go, this is awesome, how do I get it? And if we've done our job correctly, the IT folks will then go, well, as a matter of fact, here's how we're going to give it to you. Because we've worked with Catapult to come up with this roadmap, and we know how this is going to get rolled out to you, et cetera, and we've got the training plan in place, and all that type of consideration is the ideal situation in that regard. So, okay, question?
I have a question about your beta team and your support team. How big were they? Are they?
Well, so when we did the beta rollouts, we started with, I believe we only had like 20 people in our first group. It was really, really small. And like I said, we made sure that we involved the right people, the people that were going to be the ones that were learning alongside us the fastest. And so that was our governance team, because of course we're making decisions that are important and affect everyone else. And some of the key folks in IT, and then we started rolling more people on. We did, after we had everybody that was involved with our digital experience team, like it grew, because we started out with maybe one representative from, I think, 3 or 4 business areas. We didn't have all that interest right at the beginning, but then as we started rolling betas out to different areas, so we started going by business unit after we had the key people that were working on the initiative betaing. We expanded from there. The more that we expanded, the more interest we got in participation in the digital experience team. And so it started out, I would say we maybe had 10 people on the digital experience team between IT and the business units, and then it grew. And now we've got like over 30. I mean, it's crazy. And we get more people that are starting to use it more that say, I really want to be on this team, because they're having people come to them and ask them questions that they don't know how to answer, and they want to learn, they want to help. And so it'll grow. We did start out pretty small, and we had the hesitation of, I don't really know what I'm talking about yet, so I'm here to learn, but I'm not really ready to participate fully. And then after a couple of months of them using and learning, it was like, I want to run that next lunch and learn. I want to volunteer. I want to do that video, and then just it starts to snowball as people get excited and they start to learn. So the first pilot group was tiny. It was our beta group, I should say, but word starts to spread. And we had to control it. I mean, it went viral because everybody's like, I want to use that. I want that. And it was like, well, wait, for one thing, we were making sure that we were keeping up with our licensing, because, we had to have our licensing in place to be able to roll out teams. And so we were doing that methodically, and we had a plan for the amount of people we wanted to do in each iteration. And of course, again, with the consistency and the messaging, we had a very structured way that we rolled out those betas. We did a kickoff. We sent certain communications to let them know what was happening. We would walk them through like almost like a setup session to make sure that they understood how to create a team, what that meant, just some real fundamentals. The beauty of the beta was go out and play with it. We're not really going to give you any rules. And how many times do people get to do that? There was an excitement around that in general. And so it didn't take long before word started spreading, and people would notice. We do, meetings where we've got people from different business areas, and they would see teams open, and they're like, hey, what's that? I want that. That looks really cool. And we got so many requests to be part of the beta, we had to start saying no. I mean, we did. We were like, promise your time's coming. This is when you're on the schedule. And we had all of that mapped out. It's important, too, that people know that you have a plan. To y'all's point of the roadmap and the buy-in, everybody loves the fact that I can go out and play with this, but at the end of the day, they want to make sure that there's a solid plan in place, too, to get it out to everyone and to then support it ongoing. And so it's important to have those things in place before you start your beta. Don't just throw it out there flippantly and go, we'll figure it out as we go. I mean, we did a lot of that, but we had the foundational pieces in place so we could at least give people that feeling of security that, okay, well, if I'm telling you no, you can't have it right now, you're going to get it and here's when. Or, how do I know that you guys are going to support this long term? Well, here's our plan. And oh, by the way, here's the other things that are going to be coming your way. And then they get really excited. So.
I think one of the things that, from a business perspective, that we need to be mindful of is that because we are public servant institutions, and we also have a responsibility to the information, is it's important to work with your documents management, your retention people, your governance people. If you don't have that already, Office 365 will force you to get it because there are a lot of powerful capabilities that, if used inappropriately, could inadvertently share information outside of the organization. And so that's another thing, is you are, from a business perspective, are requesting these, is also just to be understanding and respectful that there are people whose livelihood is protecting the data. And there may be some misunderstandings, there may be some fear, there may be some legitimate concerns, and so working through all that, we do brown bag sessions sometimes just to come in and talk to security. Microsoft has information, just boatloads of information about the security of the platform, so it's not a matter of if it's secure when done properly, it's just a matter sometimes of helping people to see the light and understand.
I was going to pile on briefly to what Merritt was saying is I cannot overemphasize that need to try to give people freedom to experiment early on, especially with these new ways of working, because, somewhere, unfortunately, at least in the American public education system, we started off in kindergarten, the teacher would ask, okay, does anybody know the answer? And everybody raises their hand, but then somewhere along the way through our education to adults now, we get this, we're afraid to be wrong, right? So we say, who knows the answer? Who would volunteer to come up and do the next thing, and no one raises their hand? We learn this, unfortunately. And so giving people empowering them with it's okay to go out and just explore and try things initially, you've got to almost encourage that out of people in the workforce today. Was mentioning earlier in Microsoft Teams that there's a number of things to do, say chat or collaboration in channels, but meetings I found with a number of customers, by the way, is a really easy way to get people who just want to be somewhat passive initially to get their foot in the door, because you can send a meeting out, an online Teams meeting out to a number of people, everyone in this room, and they just click join, and if that's all they want to experience in that first go round, fine, right? We're talking about things in the meeting, etc., but they're fine. You might have the chat panel that pops up, and somebody says, if this is your first time in a meeting, just say hi. That's it. So then they go, okay, that's me, hi, and that's it. But then they might ask another question like, where are you connecting from today? Are you home? Are you in your office? And you're like, oh, I'm at home. And then it starts to tease them in a little bit, you know what I mean? They start getting comfortable with that. And then they realize, oh, well, I can, share a video if I wanted to. I mean, that's kind of a jump. But you get what I'm saying, is that getting people to feel comfortable with being able to start utilizing these things. Right, exactly. There's a number of things that you can really start to encourage. That's really important, especially with how fast things are changing.
So when you were demoing and showing your PowerPoint
presentation via your smartphone. I was wondering how much, and then I noticed actually on your main screen you had a lot of 365 apps on your phone, right? Does that take up a lot of space on and are any of them resource hogs?
No, so in terms of the applications on your phone taking up space and so forth, I certainly wouldn't say that I've noticed any sizable space changes on my phone. The only ones maybe are where you have the option, like OneDrive, for example, you have an option to be able to take files offline to keep them on your phone if you're not connected to a network or something. Yeah, then that might start to add up storage, obviously, on your phone. But
running the presentation, because PowerPoint presentations traditionally are, especially with a lot of graphics and whatnot, can be pretty sizable. You were running that over the cloud.
Yes, yeah, it's in transparency. It's bringing down to my phone some set of it in order for it to flow appropriately. Yeah, yeah. But it's not like downloading the entire presentation. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I was actually having this conversation earlier so I was kind of cheating, if you will, a little bit in that regards, because I was actually connecting to my laptop, and then the laptop is presenting into the projector, obviously, in this case. In my ideal situation, the projectors would all be iPhone connectable enabled, right? And I would just find it here in my list and say point to that projector and it's on, right? But that's another kind of step around the technology upgrades that would probably require all the infrastructure people to be involved, et cetera. Right.
Yeah, you would get words like, do you have any idea how much that projector costs?
Yeah. Yeah.
Alan?
Not too distant.
Yeah.
For those of you that don't know, DIR tends to be a guinea pig for a lot of new technology, which is the fun part of the job. I'll say that.
Alan's the director of technology for the DIR.
So,
And one of my IRMs.
and yeah, so basically, we have several forums that we have email forums that we have that we sponsor that you can take advantage of. The TXIRM, we have developers as resource and ISOs, etc. So one of the things that comes out of this is we like people to call us when they have a need. So you don't have the resources within your organization. We find the vendor community is extremely cooperative, and sometimes you just don't know who to call. So call us.
Right.
Call my office. Joy is a great resource. These kind of sessions that you're sitting at today come out of those questions that people ask. So it's an opportunity for you to get that on kind of our radar as to something that we might want to do something more formal like this. Other times, we do have a lot of contact with other agencies. And so sometimes I don't have the answer. Sometimes I do have the resources within my team to get them in touch with you to answer your questions. But in a lot of cases, it goes back out to either the vendor community or to some other agency that will be willing to help you, will be able to answer your questions, give you examples, give you templates. These are things that this road that has already been plowed for you, and you can take advantage of that.
We're going to your office. I am too. We'll be there. We love
Come on. We're happy to share.
I was also going to tag on earlier to when we first started. Merritt was talking about kind of a menu of offerings and so forth. And that's also an analogy that I typically tend to describe to my customers, which is, you think about fast food joints, obviously, right? You walk into McDonald's, and the goal is you can quickly identify what they have to offer, because they've got this huge menu behind the counter. It's got pictures, it's got prices, and then they even have ways that most commonly you would bundle this with fries and a drink, and that, right? That's fries with that? Right, exactly. And that's their whole goal, is to quickly get you to decide what they have, based on what they have to offer. Pick that, that's what I want, here, pay the money, right? So if you translate that to these kinds of service offerings within your organization, in terms of attracting and retaining talent and helping people self-service their ways of finding how to work in these ways, ideally that's what you want to try to strive for, and there's countless ways to do that, but being able to provide that very transparent, hopefully simple way of a menu of these different ways of doing things. You want to be able to work from home, want to be able to more easily collaborate, want to be able to more easily stay connected across the entire agency. Here's ways that you can do that. Here's who to get in touch with, and maybe you might want fries with that kind of thing, right? That's the idea.
You want video with that?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
We were working with, is anybody from TWC here? Texas Workforce Commission? I know that Chris couldn't make it. Okay. So we were working with TWC, and Richard earlier was speaking about, Richard was speaking about the customer immersion experiences, these sort of get to actually play with all the tools in a real world scenario. And they were saying, God, we'd really love to see more about Planner, which is the project management, and we want to see more about Power BI. And then what was the other one? Stream. Yeah, so for the videos. And so, there's so many capabilities that are back there that it's important to, again, understand the business objective and then match the technology to it. Because with very few scenarios, when you're just talking about general productivity and collaboration, there are very few scenarios that aren't achievable with the software you already own. It's just a matter of figuring out how to do it and then making sure it's it's set up properly so it's you're not going to do something to hurt yourself or others.
I'd like to add something onto that because inevitably we had people going out and researching the tools that were available that we hadn't yet rolled out and started asking questions. Like before we even got to mention Planner, everybody's like, well, I saw this about Planner and I want to use it because of course all of them integrate so well together and it gives you all these additional capabilities. And you need to be cognizant of that because they're going to start coming out of the woodworks and want to ask about those products. I wanted to jump back to something when we talked about the betas, just really quick to mention. Our governance team, we had records management, like you mentioned, because there's a whole concern around, I'm creating all of this technical debt, right? Whenever I put this out there, if you call your chat messages transitory and there's no retention policies around it, that's fine. But, what about the files that are in there? And what about when those files become a record? And how do you manage that? And are you guys going to figure that out before you roll it out? And there's lots of concerns. And so we made sure that on our governance team, again, we had representation from all the business areas, including records management, legal, security, all those, super important folks. That way, when you put it out there, we decided we were going to come up with what we called an MVP, a minimum viable product. And I would encourage all of you guys to do that. It's like, what is our bare minimum that we need to have in place from a governance perspective to put this out there and feel confident that we're not creating a monster that we can't then reel back in. In fact, we relied on these guys very heavily to tell us when we were going down that road, this is what we've put in place. Are we going to go too far down and not be able to go back, not be able to fix what we're creating, right? And so we were really cognizant of that, and I would recommend that because you don't want to get stuck in the details so long that you're not moving forward because there's an excitement and there's, it's like, give us this new stuff. We want it. But you have to at least be mindful enough to put the appropriate things in place so you're not shooting yourselves in the foot by running too quickly.
So records management is taken care of?
Well, I would say, because we have faced this across all of our customers, right? And it's a fundamental shift between doing the big bang sort of system rollout where you do it every 9 years and then you're done, right? And you don't have a chance to change it for the next 9 years, right? And you're kind of stuck with what you got. This is, you're moving into, with the cloud environment, with Office 365, you're moving into a much more flexible environment. And so when Mara was talking about this minimum viable product, they rolled out with a set of document control policies and document management policies and governance policies that they could live with at that point in time.
Correct.
And then you have the opportunity to grow and correct and change. There are very few things, and Richard knows a lot of these, and I know quite a few of them. There are very few things that are uncorrectable anymore. It's not once we set this flag to yes, we can never set it to no, right? And so there's I can't think of any real ones within Office 365 where you can't correct. And so that's the beauty of this cloud system, is we can go in with a minimum viable product, something that makes sure that we're safe, and we can change and grow and move and flex as you deploy. And behind the scenes on all this, and when we talk about key performance indicators and other things, there is a system, a common data model across all of Office 365, and there's a thing called Graph, and it's recording what they call signals. And signals is anytime anyone does anything in Office 365, it's noting that, right? And so there's this whole signaling process underneath the covers that allows you to understand what people are doing within the system. And so we always use that for good, but and it sounds a little concerning, but actually it's very, very helpful. And when it comes to things like making sure that your documents are staying where they're supposed to stay and not going to anybody else, extremely valuable. So, did you?
Yeah, the thought around ensuring that, again, just kind of beating a horse here, giving people an opportunity to start trying things and learning along the way, and then making those adjustments. That more iterative approach is real. It's a big change in thinking about doing these types of digital and technology initiatives. I can just say with confidence, there will be no moment in time where everything is exactly right and you have all the information and the decisions made. Never. It just will never happen. Because as soon as you think you've got it all in place, something is changing again. Something in the business model is changing, operating model, something in the technology is changing. So the best you can do is take the information you have, try to make smart, informed decisions, and then put a stake in the ground and go forward. Take a step forward at that point. And hopefully you're not taking too many steps back as you're rethinking things, but that is the changed way of the world when it comes to digital services today, is just keep trying to move things ahead. And hopefully those decisions, again, aren't too uncorrectable in this case.
Hey, Merritt, maybe you could talk about the way that we engage with you guys on that sort of ongoing coaching.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sure. Just before I forget, because I forgot
please.
this point earlier, and then I will talk about that. One of the biggest changes in mindsets, I think, too, from our business users' perspectives, was they were looking for IT to tell them what technology to use for what business function. And it's very much a mindset shift, because it's up to them. I mean, we literally said, here's the capabilities of these different technologies. You guys figure out how that works best within your business processes. And that's very different. It's very different to have the flexibility across this platform that gives you so many options. You know, I mean, you can use SharePoint for all of your project sites, or you can use Teams on the front end. And of course, it's creating SharePoint on the back end, but it's, you know, there's an understanding there, and there's a need for the individual areas to decide which works best for them. So I would encourage you, make sure that they're aware of the functionality that each application provides, but that's part of the beauty of it, is allowing each individual area to decide what works best for them. You want to put enough governance in place to where you're safe, like you guys said, but then if there's additional controls that the individual areas want, great, they can do that. But IT doesn't have to dictate that anymore. You know, it's very much up to the business, and there's a beauty in that. And now the ongoing kind of partnership.
So we've found, really, especially with the advent of the cloud and the rapid pace of innovation from Microsoft. I mean, it used to be, you know, once every 3 years you got a new version of SharePoint. Maybe there's a big patch in the middle, you got a couple new features or something, but that was about it. You know, now literally it can be, every couple of weeks or a month maybe cycle where new things are coming out. And so the day where, as Eric Russell was speaking earlier with Merritt, where like we go out, we do this 9-month project, we get everything set up, and then we're like, all right, great, call us when you need us. We'll see you in 3 years for the upgrade. Those days are over. Oh, yeah. And so what we found now is that we're much more more effective, and we work with our customers better, where we go in, we get stuff that minimum viable product, and then we stay engaged in like a coaching relationship with our customers. And so we're doing that around the employee engagement and analytics. And so maybe we could talk a little bit about that sort of coaching relationship versus the big bang project.
Sure, and that's so relevant. I mean, yeah, we'd have one massive effort, and it's like you get a contract on that, and you start, and then you end, and it's all done. We've engaged you guys for multiple different things, and the beauty in that is we have like this blanket contract where we can just essentially issue work orders. And of course, we have a not to exceed per year, but we've found as we're going down this road that we find different opportunities where we could really use the expert guidance, and they've been so great and really helped us lay the foundation and helped us keep going. We're engaging them for analytics on our intranet sites so we can continuously improve those. We're getting some really great reporting out of that. We've brought them in for some more detailed trainings to help like our digital experience team, get them kicked off. We're engaged on SharePoint Online migration, and then we found out we had an Exchange guy that left, and we were moving to Exchange Online, and so it was like, Catapult, come help us, because we don't want to lose momentum. So we've just kind of engaged, re-engaged, and we do have that relationship to where we feel when we get lost or when we just need their expert guidance, it's been really easy to, I've got Michael on speed dial, so like, Michael, we need something. But that has been really great, and it has been really a shift from kind of that major effort to, where we're just doing things more frequently and
we've been
smaller.
working with the DIR and Herschel Becker, who's the Chief Procurement Officer for the DIR, really for about 3 years around this concept of using a more agile methodology for projects. And we don't need to have it all figured out beforehand, which is when you know the least about what you really need to do. To write a exhaustive and complete and 100% accurate list of requirements before you start, I don't really know how we ever thought that would work, but we did. And so the DIR is very open to this idea of more of an agile engagement model. Now, it's a shift for procurement. And so in every agency where we come to, unless they are doing agile inside their organization and they're used to that as a methodology, the idea that, okay, so you don't know exactly what you're going to do, you don't know exactly where you're going to finish, and it might change in the middle. How's that going to work? So, but getting through that, and so now, like Merritt said, the DIR is open to having more of a way where you engage, and it can change, and it can shift, and it can kind of go up, and it can kind of go down. And so I would just really encourage you to ask your procurement to reach out to the DIR about, okay, how can we contract, using D-bits and these sort of, these older contracting vehicles that are these approved vendor lists to contract in a different way, to do business in a different way, because they figured it all out and they have classes on it, they have templates and everything, but it's sort of a secret. They're trying it for it not to be a secret, but it's still a secret in procurement sometimes.
Now, our current work order is defined so loosely that, there's no deliverables. It's absolutely not deliverables based, and it pretty much says we're working on all these gajillion things, and we'll let Catapult know which one we need to work on at what time, but that's the stuff we want to do, and it's so broadly defined. I think that it really has helped us where we can literally just reach out and say, hey, this is what we need this week, and we don't have to go through all of the procurement pain, and it takes months, and it's like we sign it, they sign it, and we're done. For each individual thing we do, we just do a quick statement of work, and it's done. And it's up to us just obviously to keep track of our budget and make sure that we're not going over, but it's made it so great because we don't have to worry about those procurement and contracting loops any longer when we need something.
Well, it's funny because their chief procurement person, I remember we had a project started, and then we started another project, and then she said, it seems like we might be doing a lot of projects with them coming up. Maybe we need to think about doing this a different way, as opposed to, a okay, we're gonna do this big thing, we're gonna roll it out. And so the DIR is now open to like a little bit more flexible ways of contracting. So as you're thinking about this and you're thinking about, oh God, okay, it's got to be this big project, it's got to go out to it doesn't have to be this 6-month, 1-year process for contracting anymore.
Yeah, it's been great.